From the beginning, we were told by British Petroleum and the American government that getting accurate estimate, of the amount of oil gushing into the Gulf of Mexico did not matter because they were responding with everything they had anyway. In our fourth story tonight, we were lied to. BP knew determining the amount quickly was critical, but the company had a financial incentive to prevent anyone from learning what it was. We were also told that dispersants, both undersea and from the air, are the best way to deal with the oil to prevent it from reaching shore, but environmental advocates testified today that dispersants, which are themselves considered toxic, make it more difficult to remove the oil from the water, not less.
It would seem that you would want it as thick and as concentrated as possible to deal with it right there, instead of circling it with numerous booms that are made for ocean wave conditions. We seem to be saying we're going to take this concentrated oil, we're going to dissolve it. So we have no ability to touch it or deal with it. For the most part, we won't see it. It's an out-of-sight, out-of-mind strategy only. It's a PR stunt to dissolve this oil with dispersants. It's just to get it away from the cameras on the shoreline.
But yet, something even more dangerous might be taking place under the ocean.
Absolutely.
Dispersants also make measuring the spill more difficult. McClatchy Newspapers reports BP has financial incentives to do just that. After weeks of BP and the government telling us the amount did not matter, McClatchy quotes BP's own internal oil spill response plan, which says, quote, "The following actions are critical to initiating and sustaining an effective response. Locate the spill, determine size and volume of the spill. Quote, in the event of a significant release of oil, an accurate estimation of the spill's total volume along with the spill location and movement is essential in providing preliminary data to plan and initiate cleanup operations. Generating the estimation as soon as possible will aid in determining equipment and personnel required, potential threat to shorelines and or sensitive areas. The priority issue will be to estimate and report the volume and measurements of the spill as soon as possible." BP, 1 month and 1 day later, still preventing anyone from measuring the oil at the source. According to McClatchy, BP has a massive financial incentive to figuratively muddy the waters about how much oil is in the water because juries based damage awards on the amount of oil released, just as they did against Exxon after the Valdez spill. This coming as BP suddenly reduced by half yesterday's estimate of how much oil it was sucking up through the siphon after admitting that its previous estimate of 5,000 barrels a day would mean the total spill itself had to be more than that. And as the New York Times reports that volunteers who offered to treat birds and collect data on the spill were told the work can only be done by contractors for BP, which again has a financial incentive, fines and penalties, to lowball the volume numbers. And that the U.S. government ordered local officials to send all their samples for testing, the results of which might also be used against BP, to an oil and gas services company that includes among its biggest clients, BP. Joining us now, a key source for that New York Times report, Taylor Kirshenfeld, Senior Water Quality Scientist and Division Manager for Escambia County, Florida's Water Quality and Land Management Division. Thank you kindly for your time tonight, sir.
Good to see you, Keith.
All right, you told the Times that you refused instructions from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration to send water samples to this TDI Brooks International company for testing. Can you explain why you did that?
In Escambia County, the sampling that we were doing, the pre-impact analysis, this was the baseline sampling, collecting water data, also data for sediment and oyster tissue. We wanted to make sure, as scientists, that we were doing the best that we could for the citizens of Escambia County. And that includes making sure that the samples are sent to a laboratory that doesn't have any perception of any kind of conflict of interest. And we felt like the laboratory in Texas just had too close of ties with the oil industry and BP. So instead of sending our samples there, we sent them to a laboratory in Pensacola, Florida.
Mr. Kirshenfeld, you also told the Times that federal officials are telling the volunteers that only the companies hired by BP are allowed to collect the data about the wildlife that's been affected by the oil coming in from this disaster. Which officials are saying this, and what's the rationale behind what they're saying?
The officials at the Unified Command in Mobile, Alabama, are telling local volunteers and local wildlife sanctuaries, people that are trained in the care of animals, they're telling them to keep their hands off, and they're telling them to back up and not touch those oiled sea turtles, marine mammals, or birds. Instead, they have their own contractor that will take care of these animals, and also their own contractor will be revealing those numbers of oiled and dead wildlife.
But surely this all has added up in your mind, and I guess in the mind of others, to being BP being more interested in containing the information and what's actually happening and the numbers on which penalties and/or legal assessments will be based, more interested in containing that information than they are in containing the actual oil spill. Do you think that's correct?
Well, that's certainly a concern, Keith. You know, for all we know, this laboratory in Texas is the best laboratory in the world. It may be. But there is that cloud of doubt. There is that perception that there just may be this conflict of interest. And as scientists, we did not want to even have to answer those questions from the public as to whether the data that we're giving them is valid and unbiased or not. We just wanted to avoid all those questions, and we knew the way to do that was to send it to the laboratory that we've dealt with for many years.
What's your position? We heard this testimony questioning the use of dispersants. What's your position on the use of these chemicals?
Some of those dispersants, as we've seen, are very toxic. They contain very toxic chemicals. And I was very glad yesterday to see that the U.S. EPA finally ordered BP and their contractors to use a less toxic dispersant, and I believe they gave them till Sunday to do that.
Lastly, we heard this senatorial nominee from the Republican Party in Kentucky, Dr. Paul, say that these things just happen. Sometimes accidents just happen. What's your reaction to that, seeing that accident firsthand?
Accidents do happen. We all know that. But also, as scientists, we need to be prepared for anything that does happen. We need to be able to deal with that. You know, I was talking to some citizens there in Pensacola yesterday. The analogy is it's like driving down the highway at 80 miles an hour knowing your brakes don't work. Mm-hmm. You know, there's no backup plan. There's no plan B. And it seems like BP did not have that contingency plan in place that they needed to have.
Yeah, I'll go you one further on an apt analogy. I'd say it's going down 80 miles an hour and there are no brakes. Taylor Kirshenfeld, the environmental official working for Escambia County, Florida. Great thanks for your insight and your time, sir.
You're welcome, Keith.
Thank you.